If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome back to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. It's just Kath here, myself for a solo episode. And today is a very brief discussion. Really, it's more like a DM, one of those voice notes that I do love sending my friends and followers on Instagram as well who connect with me. But the reason I've wanted to bring this up was because I've had a couple of these conversations lately, and one in particular really did hit home. And I can't believe that I'm still having this conversation. Like in this day and age, we are still discussing this. So for a bit of context, as you know, I'm a pelvic floor physio and I see women in the clinic one-on-one, and I've also got my online program where I help women during pregnancy with their workouts. I help them prepare their bodies for birth with the pelvic floor side of things and help support a postnatal recovery, whether or not that's post-vaginal birth or a cesarean. Anyway, had a beautiful mum come and see me in the clinic, 8 weeks postpartum, and had the baby, textbook birth, and I say that with inverted commas, but no long pushing phase, no instrumental delivery, not a big baby. It was all great on paper. But the problem she was having was she had heaviness, this pronounced vaginal heaviness, particularly at the end of the day or when she'd been on her feet for long periods of time. And that sensation of heaviness, like I remember experiencing it after the birth of my first baby. I had also a pretty good textbook birth, so to speak. I didn't think that, but I guess on textbook it would have looked like that. And I had a pretty good recovery. I'd felt really strong pregnancy, and at about 2 weeks postpartum, I thought, you know what, I'm feeling really good. I'm catching up with a friend for coffee. Instead of driving, I'm going to walk there. It was only a 15, 20-minute walk. It wasn't a long walk at 2 weeks postpartum. It was my first real outing solo, and I was a bit nervous. I popped everything in the pram that I needed. I breastfed my bubs, and off I went with my pram. I was up a big hill. I sat and had my coffee. Bubs started getting a little bit, she was needing a feed. I wasn't feeling confident breastfeeding in public. So I made my way home, and it was probably a couple of hours later. It wasn't huge. But the thing is, on my way home, and I'd had no pelvic floor symptoms whatsoever, and you might have heard me mention this story before, and the reason I'm mentioning it again is it's a very similar situation to my patient who I saw just last week. But anyway, so I'm walking home, and I'm walking back down the hill because I had to walk up the hill to the cafe. And I can remember, I could literally take you there today. I remember the exact moment on that hill where I suddenly felt like I had a ton of bricks sitting on top of my pelvic floor. It felt like everything was going to fall out, and it was scary. And I know that symptom. It's a symptom of prolapse, pelvic organ prolapse. And at the time I was so hard on myself. I was really annoyed at myself. I was embarrassed almost. Like here I am, a physiotherapist working in women's health, and I thought I hadn't been doing much, and I'd overdone it for where my pelvic floor was at. And I often say this to patients, like often our weakest link is our pelvic floor. If you've just had a vaginal birth, it's stretched up to 300%. And my body felt fine to go for a walk. I felt fine to go for a walk. I wanted to go for a walk, and it should have theoretically been easy. But for a stretched pelvic floor, that just it just stretched right out again. If you think about an elastic band that's been stretched and you've patted on that stretch, we really want that natural recoil to occur. And I suspect what happened to me was that time up against gravity, that increased stretch, not just on my pelvic floor. I could have been the strongest woman in the world. But if we've just had a vaginal birth and everything stretched 300%, it's not just the muscles, it's the tissue and the fascia and all the connective tissues. It's like when you eat a piece of steak, it's not just the red meat, it's the white sinewy bits. That's what's stretched. And unfortunately, as I said, you could be the strongest woman in the world, but if you've just had a vaginal birth, it's stretched and we need time to help that heal. Anyway, going back to my patient I saw a few days ago, she was also being really hard on herself, and she was almost annoyed with herself because she said to me, she's like, Kath, I didn't know about this stuff. I didn't really think this stuff could happen to me. I didn't even think about preparing my pelvic floor for birth. I didn't think about my post-recovery. I just assumed all would be good because I was fit and strong and I, did everything. Well, she didn't really know what she should have been doing. She said she sort of felt like she had the head in the sand, but also not meaningfully, just because she didn't know. And she'd been at a well-known, well-regarded hospital in Melbourne, and she just never once, like she said, I don't feel like I've ever really thought about my pelvic floor post-birth, and I just assumed it would all bounce back postpartum and be fine. And look, I guess at the end of the day, we don't know how birth's going to do. And maybe you do everything, and I say this with air quotes, like right, and you do everything like, so what I'm trying to say is we don't know how birth is going to progress, and what happens during birth might not be something you could have foreseen or controlled or changed. But the point is, and this is what I still can't believe, is we're still not having these conversations earlier. We're not, and I'm talking about it as a general society. Often when we're disappointed, it's because our expectations don't match up to our reality. And sometimes for women, even I see my patients who I see during pregnancy, let's say it didn't go according to plan and they have pelvic floor symptoms post-birth, they often aren't beating themselves up because, they were aware of what was a reality and they're aware of what they can do to help with their postnatal rehab and their pelvic floor rehab. So that mismatch of expectations and reality is often what causes disappointment. But what I still can't believe is that 1 in 3 women who've had a baby experiencing prolapse and pelvic floor issues post-birth, the stats are almost 1 in 2, depending on which research you look at. 1 in 2, 1 in 3 women. Yet we're still not having this conversation on a regular basis during pregnancy. And this is where I guess this podcast fits in, obviously with my work as a physio and my online pregnancy and postnatal app, because there's so much we can be doing preventatively to help prevent these issues. And when it's not preventable, and look, sometimes it's not preventable, and I totally understand that, there's so much we can be doing then to help with recovery rather than just watching, waiting and seeing and hoping for the best. I think in this day and age, it's not enough to just watch, wait, see and hope, especially when we've got this good quality evidence to help guide us as to what can reduce our risk and what can support our recovery. Like, isn't that what we ultimately all want in pregnancy? To have a smooth birth and have an amazing recovery. Like, at the end of the day, we want to have our beautiful baby and not be leaking, not have pelvic floor issues, not feel broken as a result. And that is my goal for you. And I think that should be all of our goals. We shouldn't settle for anything less. And I know I'm going on a bit of a rant here. And again, I will say, look, sometimes shit happens, the birth happens and the baby positioning, and sometimes we can't control these things. And yes, we do experience prolapse. But hopefully, if you're out there and you're listening and you do have symptoms of prolapse like I did, hopefully you've got your support network, because there's so much support available for you. And it's not something I want you to have to sort of, grin and bear for the next few years, 10 years, until we reach menopause and then symptoms are no longer sustainable and you have to go down the surgical route. Like, we don't need to wait. We can get treatment now, get that support network around us now, because this is the time you want to be having the best years of your life with your bubs and enjoying every moment of motherhood and not feeling like your pelvic floor is stopping you from, running around with your toddler at the park, running around with your kids, skipping with them, playing with them, all those things. So that's enough, ladies. I think you probably get the idea. Yes. So if you do have support, go and seek help. I'm always, send me a DM on Instagram if you need help finding your local pelvic floor physio wherever you live. If you need online support, online workouts, you need help preparing your body for birth and pelvic floor for birth and your postnatal recovery, Fitness Mama can absolutely help. That's it, ladies. Have a fabulous day, and I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer: materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'll see you soon.